What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking About Baseball. I know I haven't made a video in about a week, but we'll be making some more off-season updates in the next few days. So today, as you could have seen by the title, I will be making a video giving every single team one more player to add this off-season, whether it be from the free agent pool or on the trade block. And I think a lot of teams are still looking to add some quality free agents, as the offseason has been very quiet so far and a lot of big names are still on the board. So, beginning with the Orioles, let's get into it with them and Shane Bieber. Bieber has been highly engaged with trade talks regarding the Cleveland Guardians and other teams that need pitchers, which, coming off of a 100-win playoff team with almost no pitching, the Orioles are definitely one of those teams. Bieber is one of the best pitchers on the market and one of the more affordable pitchers coming off of kind of a bad season that was very injury-plagued, but can still be a really solid pitcher for an Orioles team where he will most definitely be the ace. Moving on to the Rays, I have Tim Anderson. After the Wander Franco drama and not really knowing what's going on with him and his current major league status, they definitely need to pick up a shortstop because I don't really think they love the options of Curtis Mead and Taylor Walls up the middle, and Tim Anderson would be a great add, as just 2 years ago in 2022, he had a great season hitting over .310 with the White Sox, but last year in 2023 he sharply declined due to most likely due to a knee injury he suffered in May. Next up, I have the Blue Jays and Jorge Soler. This whole offseason, they've been looking for a quality bat, and they have not been able to find one. They couldn't get their hands on Shohei after many reported that they actually signed him. It did not happen, as of course he went to the Dodgers. And now Cody Bellinger looks like he's most definitely going to be going back to my Chicago Cubs. And so I think one of the bigger bets still left on the board after those two are off is Jorge Soler, and I think he does make a lot of sense for them. They need a DH if Vladdy Guerrero won't be playing there next year, and I think Guerrero is still a fine option at first base, and Soler can fill that DH role. Moving on to the Red Sox, Shota Imanaga will be my player for them. I think that he's a really solid pitcher and is actually kind of underrated in the free agency pool right now. There's a lot of team finalists that are interested before his signing deadline, which occurs on January 11th, because the way the Japan Baseball League works that he's in, he can only be a free agent in the MLB for a certain amount of time until he has to go back to Japan, but he will most definitely sign before that January 11th deadline, and I think the team that should really try to get him is the Red Sox. After trading away Chris Sale, there's a big hole in their rotation, especially for a lefty, and Shota Imanaga would be a great option to fill that void. Moving on to the AL Central, we're beginning with the Twins, and I have Adam Duvall. They just lost their center fielder from last year, Michael A. Taylor. Byron Buxton has said that he really wants to play center field, but this player that could play the outfield most likely will be playing center field, and that is Adam Duvall, if they were to sign him. He can obviously also play the corner spots with a potential Max Kepler trade happening, and also kind of a void in left field for the Twins outside of Matt Wallner. Duvall is coming off of a pretty solid season with the Red Sox despite missing about 2 months. He was one of the best hitters in the league for the first couple of weeks, and he could be a really solid bat for a Twins team that could definitely use a little bit more offense added to their team after a second-round playoff exit last year. Next up, I have the Tigers and Mike Clevinger. Clevinger's coming off of one of the best seasons of his career and a resurgence year with the White Sox. Obviously, the White Sox did not re-sign him as he was asking for more money, considering the fact that, like I said, he put up a really solid season last year. The Tigers are looking for more aging pitching. The Tigers are looking for older and more advanced pitchers because their rotation currently consists of pretty much all guys below the age of 30, like Matt Manning, a returning Casey Mize, and of course their ace Tariq Skubal. I think that Clevinger would be a great addition to this team and would be a really solid piece to a Tigers rotation that, like I said, definitely needs a little bit of help. Next up, I have the Guardians, and I think their number one guy should be Carlos Santana. It's not looking like they're really going for it next year, as some of their stars like Shane Bieber, Emmanuel Clase, and Josh Naylor have all been on the trade block. Carlos Santana is an aging player and is going into his age 37 season, but he's also just a Cleveland legend and has played out most of his career there, and I think Guardians fans would very much enjoy it if they brought him back for one last ride before he inevitably retires after the 2024 season. He's garnering more interest than I expected from teams despite his old age, coming off of a season where he was still very productive, split between the Pirates and Brewers. For the Royals, I have Michael Lorenzen. They have already spent money on pitching with guys like Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha, both coming from the Padres, and I think that they will continue to add pitching as this AL Central division is really anyone's division right now. The Twins have gotten worse. The Tigers are the Tigers, no one really knows how well they're going to perform last year, so honestly, the Royals could go from 5th to 1st in this division, and I wouldn't even be totally surprised just because of how bad it is. But the Royals, like I said, have already made plenty of moves, and with having an okay offense at least, led by Bobby Witt Jr., I think they should continue to build up the pitching rather than looking on the offense. Rounding out the AL Central, I have the White Sox getting Noah Syndergaard. They have added a ton of just low-level Major League pieces this offseason, adding guys like Tim Hill, Martin Maldonado, and Chad Kuhl on a minor league deal just today. They've added just a lot of mid guys, and I think that Noah Syndergaard would be a great guy to sign on a prove-it deal, probably a one-year deal in the around 8 to 12 million range, and they could probably ship him at the deadline if he does good, and if he's bad, just get rid of him, and he will probably be done with his baseball career if he does bad, considering the fact that he has spent the last 3 years on 5 different teams, the Mets, Angels, Phillies, Dodgers, and Guardians, and has not really performed well with any of them so far. Starting with the Astros and Matt Moore. The Astros have lost a couple of relievers this offseason, pending on the fact that they don't re-sign them, like Phil Maton and Hector Neris, that were big parts of their bullpen last year. Matt Moore is coming off of maybe the best season of his entire Major League career, and I think he would be a really nice add to an Astros bullpen that, even with the departure of those two righties, also needs another lefty in that bullpen. Speaking of left-handed relievers, I have their division rival Rangers getting the better one in Josh Hader. Hader is coming off of a great season with the Padres. He's just been a great closer his entire career outside of 2022 when he got traded from Milwaukee to San Diego. The Padres are kind of dismantling their team, losing key players like him, Blake Snell, and Juan Soto this offseason, but I think they can still be good. But anyway, this is about Josh Hader and the Rangers. Hader, like I said, is a great reliever, and the Rangers have never really had a great closer in a while since Joe Nathan, and their bullpen was definitely the main flaw of their World Series winning team in 2023, and adding Hader would just make that World Series winning team even better and potentially give them a good chance at another run in 2024. Next up, I have the Mariners and Matt Chapman. Matt Chapman has been tied to a lot of different teams, but after the Mariners dealt out Eugenio Suarez, the old team I thought he would go to, the Diamondbacks, was out of the conversation, and in my opinion, that put the Mariners right in line. It's currently looking like he may be going to the Giants, but I think the Mariners still need to add an impact bat. They did just fleece the Rays the other day to get Luke Raley for a guy in Jose Caballero, who didn't really find any playing time on that team, and Raley is a really solid lefty bat to add to that lineup, along with other guys they've added, but they've also subtracted guys like Suarez and Teoscar Hernandez. So I think that adding another bat would be really big for them, and they still definitely have a hole at third base, especially now that they've traded Caballero, and Matt Chapman is a great guy to add to that position. Moving on to the Angels, I have Marcus Stroman. He's a really solid pitcher, even though he's coming off of kind of an injury-riddled and just weird in general season with the Cubs. They signed him to a big 3-year contract that he opted out of the last year, and despite having the big injury, like I said, he had a pretty solid overall year last year. The start to his season was amazing, but he got injured, and then he ended his season pretty rough with the Cubs. And I think that overall, if he can just piece a full season together of playing like his ERA for the whole season last year showed, he could be a really solid pitcher for any team, and he's also garnering a lot of interest currently. And the Angels are one of those teams as they're still looking to be a competitive team, which they've never been with Shohei Ohtani, so not really sure how they're going to be that without him, but we'll see what they're able to do, and I think Stroman is a first building block to that plan. Next up, I have the Athletics and Austin Meadows. This is another guy who's just going to be signing on a potential prove-it deal. A lot of those guys are going to be, my prediction, are going to be people I say for bad teams because there's no one that they really need because they're bad and they need too many things. So I have Austin Meadows for the Athletics. He's been extremely disappointing so far since 2019 after he broke out with the Rays. He just has never been the same player. He's been dealing with anxiety issues, but I definitely think he could go back to that 2019 form. And let's be honest, if pretty much any player signed with the Athletics, they would be a starter. So he will probably be an everyday starter in right or left field for the Athletics if he were to sign with them. And I think I would like that signature, and he will most likely get dealt at the deadline if he's playing even remotely good for them. Moving on to the NL, starting with the East, I have the Braves and Joey Gallo. I know this isn't the flashiest signing for the Braves to go out and get, but they really don't need to get anyone flashy. Their team is absolutely stacked. They don't need pitching anymore after the trade of Chris Sale. After the trade and extension of Chris Sale, and I think Joey Gallo would be a nice add to this Braves team that could still definitely use a big power bat despite breaking the MLB record for home runs last year. Gallo could platoon in left field with Jared Kelenic, but despite the fact that they're both left-handed hitters, Gallo is more of a defensive guy than Kelenic as well, so we'll see what he's able to do. Also, I think the Braves could retune his swing so he could go back to his 40-homer self from when he was with the Rangers. Next up, I have the Phillies and Brandon Woodruff. This is kind of an interesting one, but the Phillies in the last 2 years have been a team that is clearly playoff bound and looking to go deep in the playoffs, making the World Series and championship the last 2 years. And I think Woodruff could be a big part of that for 2024. Although he will not be pitching for most of the season with a shoulder injury, it is looking like he should be back by August or September and be ready to full send it for a playoff run. And I think that will be very valuable to any contender. I don't really think it makes sense for him to sign a team that doesn't think they're going to make the playoffs because he's not really going to be valuable to them. He's not really going to be valuable to them for the first season. And that just doesn't really make sense for me. But the Phillies, I think, could definitely be a team that makes the playoffs. Although in my recent predictions video, I did not have them making it. I think they definitely easily could with having such a great roster. And speaking of the Phillies, I have one of their former players going to the division rival Marlins, and that is Rhys Hoskins. He has been recently connected to the Marlins in articles that actually just came out today. Although he has formerly been connected to the Cubs and Blue Jays, I think that the Marlins could be a great landing spot for him. They're looking for a DH or first baseman to kind of pair with Josh Bell, and Hoskins may be playing more DH coming off of an ACL tear where he missed the entire 2023 season because of it. Hoskins, I think, can still be a great hitter as availability has never been a problem for him other than last year, and he has a big power threat, and he would be great for a Marlins lineup that just added Jake Berger last year, but still definitely needs more additions to their offense. Next up, I have the Mets and Max Kepler. He's been big in trade talks, and I know pretty much the whole video we've been talking about guys who could get signed out of free agency, but Max Kepler I think would be great for the Mets to trade for. Last year, folk hero DJ Stewart broke out for them in New York after their season was just completely over already for the last 2 months, and he was amazing, but I don't really think that's going to go through for the whole year, and even if it does, they could still definitely use another outfielder after Starling Marte is looking like he's probably maybe even going to retire after next year because he looked horrific last year. I think Kepler would be a really nice add to this Mets team that, even though their offense is slightly lefty-heavy, with really their only notable right-handed hitter being Pete Alonso and Francisco Alvarez, I think that he would still be a really solid add for them, and he wouldn't be mega expensive, which is usually what the Mets look for. Next up, I have the Nationals, and this is another guy who would be on more of a prove-it deal, and that's Ahmed Rosario. He's coming off of a year where he got traded yet again after being traded from the Mets and from the Guardians. He went to the Dodgers to end the year. They got other shortstop help, and he didn't end up being the starter to end the year after Miguel Rojas played better, and they acquired another shortstop at the deadline. He still looked better for the Dodgers, which pretty much everyone does when they go to LA, but I don't think that will end up landing him a contract from a contender or a contract that will be very large. So he will be going to a Mets division rival, his former team, the Nationals, on a most likely 1 or 2 year deal where he can just see if he can be better with them, as he will most likely land a starting spot, but most likely at second base with C.J. Abrams manning the shortstop position currently. Moving on to the NL Central, this is kind of a weird one, but I have Michael Busch of the Dodgers. I might as well just discuss the Dodgers now because the 2 players I have for them are Corbin Burns / Willy Adames. They're the only team with 2 players for me. I think that the Dodgers, despite having just an absolutely crazy offseason so far, will go out and acquire Corbin Burns and Willy Adames from the clearly selling Brewers. And I think the main piece they should look to get in return for that bunch would be Michael Busch. Despite the fact that the Dodgers do have big prospects other than him like Diego Cartaya, I don't know if they'll be super willing to give up for them. to give them up, considering Burns only has 1 year left on his deal, in which, with the big contracts the Dodgers have already given out, they will most likely not be able to bring him back, and Adames only has 2 years left. So I think that Bush, among other also very good prospects, should be what the Brewers target if they were to trade him to the Dodgers, and that's why those are kind of packaged together. Moving on to the Cubs, I have Cody Bellinger. I think they just absolutely need to bring him back. It's been tough negotiating with Scott Boras for them so far, as I've been all over it so far as a Cubs fan, and their very first Major League move finally just happened, although it was Brian Serven, which I'm just not very happy about. But anyway, Cody Bellinger needs to be added back to this Cubs offense, who has already lost him and Jeimer Candelario from last season, and potentially also losing Christopher Morel in a trade for a pitcher. Bellinger needs to come back if this offense wants to be even half as good as they were last year, because without him, this is not a playoff team, even with the addition of Craig Counsell. Moving on to the Reds, I have Dylan Cease. He hasn't really been connected to them per se, but I think they are one of the teams that could definitely acquire him. He's coming off of kind of a rough season with the White Sox after having a 2.2 ERA just 2 years ago in 2022 with them. He still garners a lot of value considering he has team control and will not be a free agent until after the 2025 season. He will still be a really solid pitcher for Reds pitching staff that definitely needs to add someone if they want to make the playoffs next year, and I do think that they will. I think Cease is still a really solid piece for them to acquire, and it shouldn't be very tough for them to acquire him with the absolute boatload of prospects they currently have. For the Pirates, I have Sean Manaea. This is another kind of a prove-it deal. He's been recently rumored to the Cubs, but I do think that he could go to the Pirates as well. I think that he's a really solid left-handed pitcher, and coming off of kind of some rough years with the Giants, I think that this could be a bounce-back year for Manaea, and he could be really solid and maybe even turn back to his 2018 to 2019 Oakland Athletics years when he even threw a no-hitter against the eventual World Series winning Red Sox. Unfortunately, that was 6 years ago, which is crazy to say that 2018 was already 6 years ago. Beginning with next up, I have the Cardinals, and that is and I have them bringing back Jordan Hicks, coming off of in the midst of a terrible season in 2023. They traded him away at the deadline, and that he could be a really solid reliever for them. They are trying to gain more pitching, and recently just traded for Andrew Kittredge of the Rays. And I think that they will continue to add bullpen help, as he's really the only solid reliever they've added this offseason. And I think bringing back Hicks would be a really nice addition to that bullpen for the Cardinals, as they look like they're trying to make the playoffs again in 2024. We talked about the Dodgers for the NL West, so let's move on to the Diamondbacks, and I have Josh Naylor. I mentioned Shane Bieber earlier as one of the guys that would be traded from the Guardians. I also did shortly mention Josh Naylor, and that's who I have for the Diamondbacks. Despite already having their best hitter being Corbin Carroll as a lefty, they still could definitely use a lefty, as their other best hitters, Christian Walker, Ketel Marte, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., and Gabriel Moreno are all right-handed, so a left-handed hitter is it's not terrible that they're acquiring a left-handed hitter. He could go back to right field, which is what he played earlier with the Guardians, or just play DH for them, as it's not like he's amazing at first base. And even though, like I said, they do not need a first baseman, as they have Christian Walker, he could be a guy who could give Walker days off and just play DH otherwise. And I don't think the Diamondbacks would care if he played DH, because he's a great bat to add to their lineup. Next up, I have the Padres, and this is kind of a weird one, but I have Julio Urias for them. He didn't pitch the end of the season for the Dodgers after his second domestic violence charge, but the Padres have been already adding a lot of different pitchers, adding a Korean and Japanese reliever, and are definitely looking at some interesting ways to rebuild their team after losing out on Juan Soto, Blake Snell, and of course Josh Hader, who we mentioned earlier in this video. I think that the way they're approaching rebuilding their team from losing those guys is definitely interesting, like I said, and I think that Julio Urias would just be kind of another interesting add to that mix. And he's still a great pitcher, but you just need to be able to not do terrible things off of the field. Speaking of Blake Snell, I have him going to the division rival Giants, and I think that's the guy they need to add. They've been involved in a lot of different talks for big players, including him, Matt Chapman, and and Cody Bellinger. I think that it's more likely they get Blake Snell or Matt Chapman, and I have them getting Snell here. They definitely need another starter to add to Logan Webb. They just added Robbie Ray the other day, but also dealt away former starter now Anthony DeSclafani to the Mariners in return. That adds a lot of payroll to them, despite the fact that they got rid of two guys who were pretty expensive. It actually mostly evens out, but they are now paying Robbie Ray, who's kind of iffy coming off of a Tommy John season, a lot of money, but he can still be really good considering he won the AL Cy Young in 2021, and I think that he could be a really solid pitcher for them. He just has not proved it with the Mariners so far, and Blake Snell could be another really good lefty for them, and he is coming off of, obviously, the NL Cy Young with the Padres, and would be a really nice addition to a Giants rotation that could definitely, like I said, use some help. Finally, I have the Rockies, and this is another prove-it deal with Hector Neris. Probably not where you want to go if you're trying as your reliever, as a reliever going on a prove-it deal. He doesn't really need to prove anything, as he's been pretty solid with the Astros and Phillies his whole career. But he's not really getting any interest from teams right now, and may just end up going to the Rockies because, I don't know, they just need pitching. I kind of just gave up on this one because who do the Rockies really need? They suck. They're going to suck. So I was just kind of lost, so I just gave them Hector Neris because I guess he's alright. But anyway, kind of a boring way to end this video, I guess. Sorry for that. But that will be the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed, and like I said earlier, there will be more off-season content on its way. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time on Talking About Baseball. Bye.